Good.
Alright guys, this is week 7 fantasy football tips and tricks. We are the fantasy weather.
Random thing to say while he's doing the intro.
We are the fantasy forecasters. We predict it just as good as the weathermen. We're going to change up the formula a little bit this week. We are doing our buy low, sell high, and then we're going to change things up. We're going to each go with 3 different players that maybe had a good week in week 6, and we're going to talk to them, maybe have a little fun conversation about whether they're worth rostering, maybe if they're not worth rostering, someone you just want to watch for. So we're going to kick it off first with our buy low, sell high. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with my buy low. And I think Gronkowski is someone that you could potentially buy low. Now the problem you're going to have is he does have name value. People love Gronkowski just because of who he is.
I think you're still gonna have to pay a lot to get just because of the name.
Yeah.
Just due to the
Well,
name.
and tight ends also are having a really rough year too.
Yeah,
It's going to be hard to get.
because the sad part is Gronkowski has 1 touchdown all season. He's only gone over 100 yards one time, and that was all in week 1. He hasn't gone over 100 yards or a touchdown since week 1.
Who did they play that week? It's been so long.
I don't know. Well, anyway, he has had a couple of games where he's had like 4 catches, 5 catches. If you're in a PPR format, he's only gone over 10 fantasy points
3 times.
3 times. Now, granted, 2 of those times he had exactly 10 points. So still, like, you took this guy in the first round of your draft, maybe early second round. If you were in an auction draft, you probably spent a lot of money on Gronkowski. So to me, he's definitely someone that you could probably swing for a decent trade if you believe he's going to have a bounce back. And let's be honest, everyone knows what he's capable of. Everybody knows the connection he has with Tom Brady. But I'm worried because if you look at that running game, they never had a running game like they have right now with Sony Michel.
And James White's receiving out of the back.
Right. Plus they have Edelman. Now they brought in Josh Gordon. So there's not enough balls to really go around. And I think if you really kind of push that issue, I don't think you're going to have a hard time getting Gronkowski if you truly believe in him. Now I said, tight ends have had a rough year. And Gronkowski, even though he's not put up great numbers, is still a top 10 tight end. Mainly because of the inconsistencies of the tight end position this year with all the injuries. They're just not being used in the passing game like they were in previous years. But to me, I think buy low right now on Gronkowski wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing.
Well, that, and I think you could also make an argument for sell high at this point. I mean, once again, you still got the name value. No injuries out there. Well, I think he was out for 1 week. But no injuries out there.
Played every week.
He must have been injured. I think he played through it.
Yeah.
He played. So I think you can make an argument for sell high at that point too. At this point, if you need like a running back or a wide receiver or something like that, you could probably sell Gronk and get a decent tight end off the waiver wire by matchups who does just as good as Gronk.
Right.
Well, the sad part is you probably could get a good tight end off the waiver wire with how many injuries to tight ends.
Yeah, exactly. Just play Austin Hooper.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. You guys want to start with your buy low?
Yeah, I'll go with my buy low next because it kind of goes right into what you were just saying, except I'm flipping the tight end to the San Francisco 49ers. George Kittle, he hasn't played, so if he gets injured, my apologies for telling you to buy low. But George Kittle has basically been the only offense out of this 49ers team, minus Matt Breida. And right now, he looks like he's Beathard's go-to guy, and that's something that we kind of were talking about earlier, where that's what Beathard kept doing last year, where he kept going tight end, tight end, tight end. Even if Jimmy Garoppolo, I think his is completely IR out for the year, right? He's not eligible to come back.
He's eligible, but he's not going to make it back from a torn ACL.
Well, was it torn ACL? Oh, jeez, I forgot. But even still, it doesn't. I don't think it really matters who the quarterback is in San Francisco. Kittle just seems to always have the ball gravitate towards him. And I'm telling you now, if someone has him on their team, if you offer just like a low-tier running back, you're probably going to get him. Because I really, like someone like Tariq Cohen who just had 2 big weeks, you could probably trade Cohen for Kittle, and you could probably even trade like someone like Kenyon Drake.
I don't know about Kenyon Drake. I don't know. He's backup now. He's clear backup.
But he might be backup, but George Kittle still is just like, he doesn't have a name value. Everyone's afraid of him because of CJ
Try that this
Beathard.
week, Sean.
Try it. I can see you possibly getting it. I just think that not many people are still high on Kittle, especially with Beathard being the quarterback. Now, granted, if he explodes tonight,
If he plays, he's
he's
questionable.
questionable. But if he explodes tonight, then that's obviously going to change
So you might want to offer that trade within the next 5 hours after this, while we're filming, so you will not see this at that
You're
point.
not going to see this.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'll go with my buy low then. I guess I'm going to that. I was going to say, darn. I'm going Jordan Howard. 2 rough weeks in a row now. Next week, a tough matchup again. Who knows if he's going to put up some points there. Somebody who says maybe put Jordan Howard as their top running back and don't really have much there is probably freaking out right now, especially with Cohen 2 weeks in a row outdoing him in the point. Now, to me, I don't want to say overall fluke that Cohen's doing good, but fluke that Cohen's outdoing Howard just because he's getting the touchdowns. In fact, I think they both lost a fumble this week, so
Yes.
neither of them really stepped it up much there.
Cohen's was more constant.
So Cohen's was, yeah, it was at the end. Wasn't it over? No, it was at the end of the game. It was before overtime. So he struggled. He will come back. Actually, their schedule lightens up a little bit after this week. So you might be able to steal him in the coming weeks for somebody who's really freaking out. Maybe for the trade, I say maybe flip a Djax or Larry Fitz, 2 wide receivers who have name value, who Djax started off good and hasn't done much since. Larry Fitzgerald has done nothing this year. So maybe see if you could flip name value for Jordan Howard or something like that. Possibly even let's throw the name out there again, Kenyon Drake in there as a secondary, just to give them a running back to go with it. But I think Jordan Howard's at either this week and next week. I don't know if he struggles again next week, he might even be a little bit lower then, and he may struggle next week. But I think right now is the time that if you need a running back, Jordan Howard is going to be the second half of the season savior for you.
Well, you don't know. Also, there's deep rumors that he might get traded.
Sure.
Yeah, there's the rumors of the Eagles actually was although I think almost every starting running back who struggled has been rumored to go to the Eagles except Kenyon Drake.
Right. So now moving on to sell high, and it's funny you would mention Deshaun Jackson because he is my sell high. Here's the biggest thing I have with Deshaun Jackson. The first couple of weeks with this Magic, they had a great connection. He put up some wonderful numbers. I don't think he's as hot as he was, a couple of weeks ago, but he's still somebody you can sell high on because in the last game with Jameis Winston, he had 9 targets, which is a season high. Even if Magic didn't target him that time. Now, he only converted 4 for 77 yards on those 9 targets, but last year, Jameis Winston and Deshaun Jackson were not on the same page. He was extremely inconsistent. I mean, for the most part, he was pretty much unrosterable, for pretty much the whole season.
Yes, believe me, I know.
With Jameis Winston. So for me, if you have Deshaun Jackson on your roster right now, and you can flip him for a Jordan Howard, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Mainly because you don't know what you're going to get with Deshaun Jackson. Even before, he's been extremely inconsistent. All throughout his career, it'd be like 1 week he goes off for 33 fantasy points, the next week he gets you 3.4.
Next 3 weeks he gets you 3.4.
So to me, Deshaun Jackson is definitely someone worth selling high on, especially if you can get a decent value for it.
Yeah, and I'm going to just take it over from here just because mine connects with that. I'm saying sell high on Jameis Winston right now. Now, you're going to both laugh, but he's going to have another good week next week. He has another matchup right off the top of my head. It's the Browns. He should have a good game there, probably put up some points. Not as much as this week just because I don't think the Browns are going to put up as many points as the Falcons did. With that being said, he's going to have a second good week.
You never know.
You never know. Hey. So right now he's at his highest value you can have. I know he got rostered in a lot of leagues this week. And people are seeing that, and more people who don't know as much football, who don't look ahead at the weeks and everything, are going to look and say, Winston, this guy's back, he's exploded again, he's going to do exactly what Fitzpatrick did and explode on like 5 teams. You may be able to flip him for someone who's struggling, who has a softer schedule down the line. Watson out in Houston, he's had, 3 rough weeks in a row now? So his schedule evens out. I think he has another rough game against Jaguars this week, and then his schedule evens out until the next game against Jaguars. So maybe flip Winston for Watson, go from there, see if somebody takes that trade and get a guy who's going to be down the line for you and get rid of a Winston who probably in about 4 weeks is going to be dropped anyway for most teams. So right now is the time to flip Winston, and while he still has any value at this point this season. See, I sold it. You both laughed, and then I sold it.
Well, I don't know. Too many people are still going to want Winston.
Yeah, but when you look at Watson, who's averaging probably about 10 points right now per game in the last couple weeks.
No, I wouldn't say the last couple weeks. He's actually been doing pretty good the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
No,
you're good.
Okay. My sell, my sell high is Melvin Gordon. Now, I know that you really don't want to start selling your top running backs, and I know he's pretty much still top 10 running back.
He might be number one after this week.
No.
Gurley.
Gurley, never mind.
Ezekiel Elliott's
Gurley and Elliott both have
Elliott's actually
monsters.
number one.
And Gurley.
How's Elliott number one? Gurley's had like 15 touchdowns.
Oh, for fantasy? Not fantasy, it probably is.
I was gonna say.
No, Gurley has to be number one.
Yeah, but Melvin Gordon had a huge game this past week against the Browns. I don't see him replicating that throughout this year. Right now, so far he's only had 2 games over 100 yards. Otherwise, he's kind of been fighting with Austin Eckler for the not starting position. Gordon's definitely going to be the starter, but I think right now people are going to be on an extreme high for Melvin Gordon. Will pretty much give up a lot for him. And in all honesty, the way I look at it is if you can get a guy who probably would get you at least maybe 10, 11 points, at least weekly on average, and possibly get some bigger names out of it, like a nicer wide receiver, maybe even a decent running back to replace Melvin Gordon. You might even be able to get a Rob Gronkowski out of it and sell your tight end a little bit higher there, since, I mean, because Gordon's high right now. Like, Gordon's on a very big high with a 3-touchdown game, 158 yards, I believe. And again, it's against the Browns' running defense that was suspect going into it. Chargers still do have to go through some tough running defenses still. I just think you could get a great value out of Melvin Gordon for like, you could probably get Melvin Gordon for like 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
And like that goes a long way, because one guy's not going to win you a championship, a team will.
Yeah, and why don't you tell your friend that in our Fantasy Money League who keeps turning down my trades of DeAndre Hopkins and a couple players for him. But anyway, so let's jump into our new segment that we're going to do this
I
week.
mean, if you only have one running back, I can see why they're not.
Well, Matt Breida, man. He's my top running back right now. No, technically James Conner is, but James Conner obviously has a lot of baggage. So we're going to do a new segment this week. Basically, we're going to go through, and we all picked out 3 names and put a little bit of stats on them. Names and defenses, and put a lot of stats about them down. And we're going to sit here and we're going to argue, or maybe agree, who knows, on if you should sign them this week, or if they were just a 1-week wonder and to avoid them like the plague. And I'll start off to kind of give you...
I'm not technically going with just past week.
Well, this overall season, we haven't done this yet, because Albert Wilson, my first one, kind of fits this season thing. He had 6 receptions, 155 for 2 touchdowns, but he does have 4 touchdowns on the season now, 6 games in. The knock on him is going into this week, he was only doing 18 routes per game, but he did end up with 9 targets, so if he was doing 18 routes this week, he had 9 targets this week, so half of his routes he got targeted. He had 9 targets this week and had a monster game and was a huge part. Unlike Kenyon Drake, he was a huge part in the Dolphins beating the Bears. Would you sign Albert? Should you sign? Not would you. Should you sign Albert Wilson at this point?
How many times did Ryan Tannehill go to Albert
Exactly.
Wilson?
That's my biggest.
Not many. Well, that's the problem with him. He only ran 18 routes in the first cup with Tannehill in there. With Brock Osweiler in the game.
See, the weird
he got
thing-
targeted like
the weird
crazy.
thing with the Dolphins is they have a passing game. I just don't know who's getting the ball.
Right.
Because there's no Dolphins receiver. Like Kenny Steele, he gets some occasionally. Albert Wilson gets some occasionally.
Everyone but-
Danny Amendola.
No, Danny Amendola does
He
not get
actually
it.
had a decent game.
Well, if you count 9 fantasy points, a decent game.
I'm not really.
Fair
I'm
enough.
not buying into the Albert Wilson hype. I mean, he did have a great game. Kudos to him. But Brock Osweiler clearly looked his way more than Tannehill did. I mean, if you have the roster spot and you have someone sitting on your roster that you can feel comfortable cutting for Albert Wilson, I don't see.
Like, say, Kenyon Drake, I would say Albert
6
Wilson.
times his name has been brought up.
Because-
You sound like a bitter ex.
I am. Kenyon Drake should be in jail for how bad he's done this shit. No, he's the backup now. Albert Wilson, I would roster, but I wouldn't necessarily start him quite yet. I would roster him to kind of see, because Danny Amendola's been a struggle.
But when do you start him then?
Right.
Give him a couple weeks, see if he continues. Because he's going to get more points, though, at this
Dolphins
point.
still have a Vikings defense that they have to play. The Patriots have not looked bad on
To
defense.
be fair, the
I think
Vikings pass defense is pretty lowly ranked right now because all the teams that have been thrown
Well,
on.
it's also the Dolphins who.
The Dolphins. Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Overall.
I mean, you have the Patriots coming up. The Bills have been a surprise in defense, and the Jets. I mean, the Jets just made Andrew Luck look like his worst game.
But
of
Andrew
this
Luck
year.
still ended up putting up 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, but that doesn't really matter. Whenever they also picked him off twice. I mean,
Well,
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking.
Three.
It was 3. We're technically talking fantasy football here. So Andrew Luck may have looked like crap in the game, but
Okay.
fantasy-wise, he was gold this week again.
but he's also a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill.
True.
Wilson-
The only reason I'd argue that is that Tannehill was out all last season, so I can't even argue that one.
Wilson kind of reminds you of a Deshaun Jackson type player.
Fair enough. And I had
He-
Deshaun Jackson on my team for a
He
whole
could
year.
very well have these games where he goes off for like a $150 and 2 touchdowns. Then he could also have 1 catch for 5 yards.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
true. Well, the only reason I'm saying that is because the only reason I'm saying the roster, and before Brent had rudely come out, no, I'm kidding, is Danny Amendola has been worthless in the sign this year, and if Albert Wilson isn't ahead of him at the depth chart yet, he probably will be this week, which is why I would
He's the
say
number one guy.
Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills is number 1. But they're trying to trade your Devontae Parker though.
yeah.
Devontae Parker though.
I don't know. To me, I just
It's
if you have someone worth cutting for Albert Wilson, I'm not saying to put him on your roster.
so. Would you take him over a Geronimo Allison?
No.
Would you take him over a Marquise Wilson?
Who has Marquise
I was gonna
Wilson?
say, who the hell has Marquise Wilson?
Well, he was the number 1 receiver going into the year. People had drafted him.
For
The 49ers.
Marquise Goodwin?
Goodwin. No, I said Wilson.
I'm like, that's what I was like, what is
Marquise Wilson? I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking. Wilson. Marquise Goodwin. Goodwin.
Well, yeah, because the 49ers don't have an offense right
They don't
now.
have a quarterback.
They have Kittle and Burrito.
Just wait till they make a bank-breaking trade for the top backup quarterback in the league. You
Here's
just
the
wait.
thing. Here's the thing. Even though Crabtree had 1 good game, I still wouldn't drop Crabtree for Wilson. I still trust Crabtree
Fair
more than
enough.
I trust Albert Wilson.
Fair enough. I would say.
And I know Crabtree had his best game this past week, but
Same general thing. Fair enough. I think we've talked enough about Albert Wilson, though.
Alright, well, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to deal with my defense, and the single Bills fan listening, you're going to be extremely happy because I'm going with the Bills defense. We have knocked them completely off. Their defense has been playing balling out. Like, they're a top 10 fantasy defense as of right now.
Probably in the top 5 at this point. After
They have
this week.
scored over 20 fantasy points in 3 weeks. They have played, even when they took on Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, they still had 15 fantasy points. They scored over 20 fantasy points against the Vikings offense. Now, granted, that was one of those surprise games no one saw coming. But
Put up 19 this
to
week.
me, like, would you roster them over some of the top defenses out there? Like,
Depends what you talk about top defense. Now, is there a top? This year's weird because I don't know if there like any of those expected defenses that were considered top defenses have not. I think Jaguars put up a negative point. Vikings have put up a negative point this year.
well, not even going with the big defense.
Bills have to,
Here's
though.
the real big thing to show how weird this is, which is why Bills isn't bad. I'm pretty sure the number 1 fantasy defense right now is the New York Jets.
It's probably pretty.
And
good.
I really wish I was joking, but I'm pretty sure it's the New York Jets.
Browns were a top 5 defense, or a top 5 fantasy defense going into this week. They probably dropped this week, but they were a top 5 going into this week.
I mean, right now,
Bills are 6.
If you're plug and play, and then yeah, I'd say it's not a bad thing to get the Bills to get a set defense.
but would you?
I would.
When I drop
roster-
it, I would not drop even though Jaguars and Vikings have struggled, I would not drop them for the Bills.
Agreed on that one. I would not. I think as the season goes, defenses get stronger. So any of those top defenses. Now, would you make an argument? Would you drop, like, say, a Browns defense who has shown a couple negatives in a row? Yes, and I did this week. I will tell you that I did for the Bills this week.
Would you
Um,
drop the Buccaneers defense?
No, God, you get out of here. Why would anyone do that? I've had them rostered for 5 years now. They're not going to go away.
Wait, did you say defense? I thought you said offense.
I dropped the Buccaneers offense. We're trading the Buccaneers offense. Did you hear our video earlier? I would say yes for Bills defense. I think they're a rosterable for a full year, play them every week defense at this point. I think week 1 was a mirage. I think no one came out expecting anything in that game. Somehow the Ravens decided to put up 40 points and give them the negative. I think Bills for the rest of the way. I think you can safely play them pretty much every week.
I think the only games I would be leery of
Patriots.
in England. I mean, in Buffalo, I would consider starting them against the Patriots because they have
And they have shown in the past.
But when they're on the road in New England, I don't think you're not starting Bills.
You're probably right on that one. But almost any week I'd play them. And you could easily pick up another defense and cut. Most teams have that one player on their bench that everyone's sitting there like, why is that person still rostered? You have that. Most teams have that spot.
Right.
So they'll be able to keep them there.
All right, well, I think I'll go tight end then. I'll throw the other oddball one we got. It's not a typical name you're expecting. He's actually a rookie this year for the Dallas Cowboys. Jeff Swaim. Numbers don't look great right now. 16 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown. However, that is the 15th ranked tight end for receiving yards.
That's terrible.
For receiving yards. However, it's really looking like Prescott might be starting to find like a rhythm with Swaim. So, in all honesty, with how bad tight ends have been going, would you at least roster him, maybe not start in the next couple weeks?
Not yet. Not yet. For me, he has to show me a little more. And don't get me wrong, the touchdown that he did have was an incredible touchdown catch, which shows that he has promise. But I don't think he's quite there yet to roster. I think he's still... Is he officially the starter now?
Yeah.
He's officially number one now. I don't think he's quite there yet.
Yeah,
Give him a couple...
Rico Gathers.
I was gonna say Rico Gathers was...
I can't believe he's still on the team in all honesty, but yeah, Rico Gathers has officially.
I just don't think it's right. You could get Swaim, and you probably could get him next week, and you probably could get him the next week. So I don't think it's a rush to get him, but it's a keep an eye on. I don't think he's quite there yet to be able to roster.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think maybe long term there's some upside there, but as of right now, like you said, the numbers aren't great. And, you know, outside of this last game against Jacksonville, it's not like that Cowboys offense has been pass happy. So to me, this is still Zeke's team. It's going to run through Zeke. It's always going to run through Zeke. And until Jeff Swaim starts putting up decent numbers, I don't think you can really roster him. And let's be honest, like, even when he finally does have that game where he turns things on, he's still going to be available in probably like 70% of leagues.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's probably so. I personally say no at this point.
I mean, in all honesty, I wouldn't grab him yet either. I mean, it's just one I decided to throw up because, I mean, it's a name that's been coming out there lately because tight ends, again,
Right.
as we previously mentioned, you don't know who's going to even be starting because a lot of them have gotten injured. You had your injured O.J. Howard, he did come back.
Evan Ingram's
Tyler
already come
Eifert,
back,
Evan
right?
Ingram, but he's been hurt as well. So, I mean, there's just been a lot of tight end injuries. And that's why it could be one interesting to look at it, but I agree. I mean, unless it's a two tight end league where everybody has two tight ends, I would steer clear.
And if it's like a 12-person league where everyone has two tight ends, then yes, put them. But if you're in a basic fantasy league with a couple bench spots and starter, probably not at this point. But if you're a really deep league, yeah, heck yeah, get them immediately. So yeah, with that, I'm just gonna stick with the Cowboys. Why not? After they had their best week of the season, so they obviously should have the most people on here. So I'm going with the quarterback. I'm going Dak Prescott. He didn't have too bad of fantasy points in Houston. It wasn't great, but it wasn't too bad. Looked decent at the end of that game, but just couldn't pull it away. This week, it looked better than it was. He had 183 yards, which it seemed like he had more than that. That game, it seemed like he was throwing every play. And 2 touchdowns. And let's continue to not forget, the Jaguars are, wow, Alex, we're boring him. The Jaguars are a top defense this year. 7 touchdowns on the season in 6 games, which is pretty rough, but 2 this week. Is this an upswing of Dak Prescott, and is this somebody that you should have on your roster to start a quarterback from here on out, or was this a mirage against a top defense?
To start him?
No,
Well, I mean-
I'm not starting him.
Yeah, look at that, because for quarterbacks, usually people won't have 2 on their roster. Usually you're either in 2 groups. You're either that guy who has, like, say, a Matt Ryan or something like that, who has your starter all year long, or you're that person that goes onto the waiver wire every single week and picks up a new quarterback.
I've
every
never
week.
seen that guy.
No.
I'm that guy.
If you're in, I'm in a league where it's a 12-team league and a 2 QB league, so you have to start 2 quarterbacks, and even then, Dak Prescott's still on the wire.
Wow, that's crazy. Considering you just told me that someone has CJ Beathard in that league.
But CJ Beathard, from a fantasy standpoint, puts up points.
Sometimes.
And going away from his league, since you have to have 2 quarterbacks, there's still a lot of leagues that have Andy Dalton out there.
Yeah, that's
So
very
why would you go with Dak Prescott when you could get someone like Andy Dalton or
Because he's a Dallas Cowboy. It's America's team, and just like the Steelers, just like the Patriots, one win means that they're coming back and they're playoff bounds.
I mean, you really want to hear something that's going to probably annoy everybody. I'd rather have Eli Manning than Dak Prescott.
Wow.
And the reason
Wow, that's the whole.
he's got no one to throw to, except maybe Jeff Swaim in the coming weeks.
Mike, don't worry, you're excited.
Cole Beasley had 2 touchdowns.
In all honesty, I'm sitting here, I'm arguing just to get the argument's sake out there. Dak Prescott to me, continues being one of those by the matchup. I would have never played him against the Jaguars. I'm going to be completely honest. I would have said bench him against Jaguars. But he's one of those guys that I would go out there to say that I have your Matt Ryan or I have your Tom Brady and we're on a bye week and I need somebody, and Dak Prescott's up against the work. He's up against. How deep do I go? I'm trying to go deep.
You're
here.
really not selling him still. If you're
I'm not saying so.
He's against the worst defense. Well, of course you're going to put him in against the worst defense.
Well, most people don't though. There was players that I signed last minute this week. I'm just talking about our league. I don't know about other leagues that were up against worse defenses this week that are still on the wire. So you have a lot of people out there who don't sign players at all during this week, and you could get players like Dak Prescott up against a worse team and get him for a week. With you saying he's on the wire when you have a 2-quarterback league, you can get him in weeks like that and start him. I wouldn't start Dak Prescott ever the whole year long.
If I was in some unparalleled universe where my starting quarterback was Ryan Tannehill, I would consider Dak Prescott. But that would be about it.
So if you're in an 18 to 32 person league and Dak Prescott's your only choice, then probably get Brock Osweiler.
Yeah. Hope for an injury.
And hope get Brock Osweiler and hope he's against the Bears.
Honestly, I think I'd probably play Lamar Jackson and hope for a touchdown.
And no, honestly, I was going to go the opposite route, and I'd say I'd get the quarterback for the Saints that has been used in 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, what is that guy's name again? That guy's solid though.
But yeah, no.
We don't even know the guy's name, but we'd sign him over Dak Prescott.
All right, my second guy, he's been playing really well the last 2 games. Can Taylor Gabriel finally get some love?
I have been a huge Taylor Gabriel guy for 2 years now, and I actually gave up on him last year. 2 years ago, he was one of my saviors. Last year, I gave up on him. I really hope that he would step it up as the Bears, but he is too inconsistent. They have too many people that they're throwing to between him and Allen Robinson and Tarek Cohen and who's the tight end out there again in Chicago? Trey Burton. A lot of people are getting it. So they're one of those teams that I feel like is getting a different receiver every week that is the big one.
Lately, Taylor Gabriel's been being used in a lot of different looks, and I think Chicago is basically realizing that Trubisky's not getting it done. And I think they're actually trying to go and just
Did you
throw
see the
him.
Buccaneers game?
Yeah, well, that's... We also threw a lot of wild plays in that one too. But I really think that Gabriel is starting to take over as the definite number 2 over Anthony
rookie.
Miller.
The
Anthony
rookie.
Miller.
He's the rookie. I don't think he's done anything.
Didn't he have a touchdown last game?
I think he.
I think he did.
I think he did.
He had a touchdown, but he's not giving many looks.
But I was gonna say right now, I think Gabriel is probably one of your better options on the Bears, and I'm even saying that over Allen Robinson, because right now Trubisky is just having trouble getting the ball down the field, which is what Allen Robinson does. I'm not saying cut Robinson. I mean, if you have him, then put him in because he's at least still getting you points. But I actually think Gabriel would not be a bad roster spot.
Well, they use him like the Falcons did a couple years ago. The short passes and let his speed take over because that guy's got some of the
But
best
that's the
speed
thing.
in the league.
The one thing that they are starting to do that's really throwing it off is that they're starting to line him up in the backfield
Yeah.
for like a wildcat, and I'm pretty sure he had 60-some yards running this week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even more. I mean, it looks like they're trying to really start to get Taylor Gabriel more in the offense, just like they were with Cohen.
Yeah, and like I said, for Taylor Gabriel, I'm not fully convinced to roster him quite yet, mainly because it's quarterback more so than anything. Mitch Trubisky getting it down there. But if this keeps happening where Taylor Gabriel keeps getting these passes, they keep giving him the open field to run, this guy, you saw him in Atlanta the Super Bowl year, he was outrunning everyone and basically carried that team once Julio Jones got injured. He can do that for Chicago. He can do that for their offense. So I wouldn't quite yet. But if you start seeing a lot of people going, like a lot of people struggling with wide receivers and starting to getting wide receivers to the market, you might want to pick them up and maybe get them trade bait early on here. Who knows?
Well, since you scratched my running backs, my wide receivers back, I'll scratch yours.
All right.
Vikings. We got two of the top receivers in the league. There's no way we're going to
Because they're already on teams.
They're on every team.
Because surprisingly, D.D. Westbrook is not on most teams. And right now, his stat line is 27 catches, 387 yards, only 2 touchdowns. That's a little low for it. But right now, he is ranked 29 for receiving yards. Right now, he's better than a lot of the wide receivers that are actually on teams. And yet, every week, he's out there. And granted, he's not giving you like 20 points a game. Like again, his touchdowns, 2 touchdowns is low. However, with how the Jaguars have been playing lately, they're turning into a throwing team, especially with Leonard Fournette. We don't even know what's going on with him. And TJ Yeldon, it's not doing bad, but obviously they know that they're going to have to get Bortles out there. Bortles has already showed that Westbrook is one of his favorite guys. He's been throwing it to him a lot. So I think it's kind of surprising to see that a top 30 receiver not on any team so far this year.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. As long as your quarterback is named Blake Bortles.
I was going to say, 2 words, Blake Bortles, next.
they want to stay away, but I agree. D.D. Westbrook is his go-to guy.
Well, I make an argument for Kalen Cole, too.
He is right down there, too.
But here's the thing. When the Jaguars drafted D.D. Westbrook in the 2nd round, he was meant to be our number 1 guy.
Who knew that you're going to clean out every single other one of your receivers to do it?
He's a former Biletnikoff winner in college. His college numbers are impressive. His speed's impressive. What he can do in the open field. The Jaguars do line him up in different, on the outside, in the slot. But again, when your quarterback is named Blake Bortles, people have a hard time trusting you, and I get it. But the thing with this Jaguars defense is a mess. And Bortles is going to have to keep throwing the football. He's averaging 40 passes a game, which is not something the Jaguars
Did he
want.
hit 62 a couple weeks ago?
The Jaguars' game plan wants Bortles to throw 5 times a game and let Fournette run the football. But Fournette's health's an issue. The defense is struggling, mainly because the offense can't stay on the field. So, to me, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't have at least Westbrook on your roster just to see where it goes. Because, again, Bortles has to throw to somebody.
I'm iffy on this one, just because, once again, 2 words, Blake Bortles. And consistency, which also kind of goes along with Blake Bortles. For one, there's a couple different receivers on that team, and you don't know if you're going to have a Cole week, you don't know if you're going to have a Westbrook week. They're both top 30, they are, but they're also, Cole's out of the top 30 now. He was for a while there. He must have fallen off.
Top 40.
Yeah, top 40. He was top 10 for a very short time there.
Yeah.
But either way, you have a different receiver stepping up for a while, for every once in a while there. It's supposed to be Marquise Lee's team, actually, after all that. But Blake Bortles is not consistent. He's throwing the ball 62 times and not completing a very reasonable amount of it. And he's just not, he doesn't have accuracy and consistency completing passes. Plus, for any of those receivers, I feel like what's the point of rostering when you could pretty much sign them any single week, and neither of them are going to really explode to ever be a guy that's going to be consistently rostered up to an 80 to 90% of the leagues.
If you're going to say anything to complain about, you could just say Blake Bortles is mainly doing check down because he doesn't have a lot of
So
time
TJ
in the
Yeldon.
pocket.
TJ Yeldon.
So yeah, Yeldon. It's still a running back team.
It's
I know it is, but I still think Westbrook is at least someone to look at for what. You say why Adam because in all honesty, that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people have players they're never going to start on their bench because you never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
Obviously, you draft a core group that you're basically going to be throwing out there each week.
Yeah, and mostly your depth, your better for your depth and your plug and play. But I mean, Keelan Cole.
We've
Westbrook.
gone to a completely different person, by the
D.D.
way.
Westbrook isn't.
So kind of an iffy one there. Oh, well, let me give me Danny a second. Hold on, Danny. 1, 2.
Who's going?
I can't go. Unless we want to go different. I'll go. No biggie. Okay, yeah. So like I said, a little toss up here between if to sign D.D. Westbrook. He top 30, so
There's
could
a lot.
do worse.
Right now, we're tossing up a lot of them, though. I mean, I don't think there's any solid, like, you definitely got to have.
And there's not, and coming up with this, I didn't expect us to have a couple people, which leads me to a starting running back that is a free agent in a lot of leagues, Peyton Barber. This week he had no touchdowns, but had his best game of the year with 82 yards on 13 carries. 82 carries. I don't think anyone's ever going to have that.
Oh, that's
13
so
carries
not
for 18
good.
yards, no
Yeah.
touchdowns, but he did have a receiving touchdown. And he did have about 30 yards receiving. I don't think I wrote it down. So he did have some receiving thrown in there to have a pretty decent week. He has Cleveland next, who, like we've already said earlier, Melvin Gordon exploded on them. Who knows if Peyton Barber, he's no Melvin Gordon. I'll put it that there. But with that, it's a starting running back in an area where starting running backs are hard to come by. Should you roster Peyton Barber at this
I
point?
would still look at a backup running back.
You still look a bit of backup over Peyton Barber.
Because this is a Bucks offense who is basically
Throwing.
having to pass all the time.
That's just it. They're not playing ground and pound, control the clock football because
They're always
defense-
behind.
Right. I mean, and plus, he's Ronald Jones. They brought him in. They drafted him high in the second round. That's their guy. Even though he was hurt, this is his second game back. He didn't look great at all. Sooner or later, he's going to take over that backfield. Because if they were really sold on Peyton Barber, they wouldn't have taken Ronald Jones in the second round. So,
Well,
while
no,
I
so-
do like Peyton Barber, because he is a starting running back, it's hard because he has no touchdowns except for that one reception touchdown. He hasn't gone over 100 yards. In fact, 82 rushing yards is probably his highest output of the season.
It is.
Against a terrible rush defense in the Falcons.
Do they play the Cardinals this year? None of us are going to know. But if they play the Cardinals this year, play them that week.
They might, because if they were the worst team in the NFC South, the
Yeah, they
Cardinals.
probably-
They probably will.
Yeah.
There's a week to play them.
There you go.
Unless Ronald Jones is
Yeah,
taking
I was gonna say,
over.
it depends. I mean,
The only reason I would say yes to roster it is if you're in a league like ours, similar to ours, where there is a lot of people. There's 12 teams, and this talk for 12, 14 team leagues here. When running backs are really hard, and if you really look at waiver wires in leagues like that, running backs are pretty much cleared up. I think the best one in our league is Bilal Powell, who's beyond hit or miss, and I think is a worse choice than Peyton Barber. So personally for me, I think he's worth. You may never start him. You may have other running backs to keep it there, but he's worth rostering just because, for one, your depth on there, you get a starting running back out of it, and for two, if somebody else is fully desperate for a starting running back, you have trade bait right there. So, I mean, I think he's worth rostering just for that. With that being said, is he a guy that I think you should roster and start week in and week out? I don't think there's too many weeks besides a Cardinals week where you would start him in all honesty. But I think he's worth rostering for the trade bait possibility.
All right, well, to wrap this section up here.
Whoa.
Well, hey, wrap it up. Wow, we still got two here.
No, I gotta go.
Oh, no.
I gotta go with one more that I
Yeah.
guess could kind of go in two with your.
What you said you start a backup running back.
So,
Sean, we're taking it out of your
Yeah,
hands.
that's fine.
The one I'm putting up there is mainly because, one, we have a lot of question with the Falcons running backs with Devonta Freeman being injured, and a little bit of talk about Tevin Coleman being under trade block. So, Ito Smith, who right now is not a guy that you're expecting to get like 100 yards rushing because he only has 100 yards for the season. Ito Smith has been basically their goal line / red zone guy. He's been basically taking all those touchdowns away from Coleman and Freeman, in case if you guys have them. Sorry about that. But Ito Smith, it looks like they're starting to try and slowly get him involved, and with Devonta Freeman already being ruled out this Monday night for the Week 7 showdown between them and the Giants. This could potentially be a huge breakout game for Smith if they officially start putting him in over Coleman, which they were slightly doing this past week against the Bucks. Again, his stat line's not great. 32 carries, 102 yards, but he does have those 3 touchdowns. And again, he is the goal line red zone guy. So would you put someone like that in who definitely could get you touchdowns, maybe not a lot of yards?
My issue with Ito Smith of roster, and this week with Devonta Freeman out, yes, I would say I would roster Ito Smith this week. I'd probably play him this week on a rough one. Do I want to roster Ito Smith from here on out? It depends. So Ito Smith, I would probably, this week for sure, I would take Ito Smith. I mean, if Devonta Freeman is out on the Monday night game, he's going to get the carries. He's going to be the guy right there with Tevin Coleman. Who knows? Now, after that, the question comes of, is he worth it with Tevin Coleman or Devonta Freeman not traded? If neither of them get traded, and I haven't heard any talk for Devonta Freeman at this point.
Nah, it's only been Coleman.
Yeah, it's only been Coleman, but I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, with Freeman out, they're doing fine with the running.
Well,
the whole team's rough.
I mean, in
but-
all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if they trade either of them either, because in all honesty, Ito Smith was drafted this year.
Yeah.
And-
So for me, Ito Smith is definitely worth it for this week. After that, it all depends on what happens with Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Because if neither of them go away, I can't see Ito Smith keeping up these numbers if neither of them goes away.
Well, I mean, there's not really numbers, it's just...
Well, not numbers. Okay, for Falcons wise, putting up decent running back
You get
stats and
touchdowns.
receiving in the receiving game.
Right. All right. So to wrap this section up, we're going to start with my last player. I was kind of high on him last week, so I'm going to stick with that current trend of David Moore, the Seahawks wide receiver, who is now number 2 on the depth chart. You know, climbing up there steadily behind Doug Baldwin in a passing game that is hit or miss. He has had 3 touchdowns in 2 games, which is solid. The only downside is he's yet to go over 50 receiving yards in either of those contests since he kind of came into the passing attack, so to speak. I think he'll, sooner or later, he's going to have that breakout game where he goes over 100 yards, but we all know Doug Baldwin is the guy.
To a point, anyway, he hasn't done much this
Right, he
year.
hasn't done much this year. That running game with Chris Carson and Mike Davis has been turning around. So, do you think David Moore, just based off of the last 2 games and where he's kind of fallen on the depth chart and what he's continuing to do in limited capacity, is worth harboring on the roster?
I think it mainly depends on the Seahawks' upcoming matchups. I mean, again, they do have to play the Rams again.
Whose secondary is terrible.
Yeah.
Well, injuries did that, but yes, they're pretty beat up right now.
They go against the San Francisco 49ers.
Is their defense there?
Their secondary is like...
Their secondary, they're towards the bottom.
But with this Seattle defense not being the Legion of Boom anymore, I mean,
They look like it this week.
they looked at it this week. But for the most part, a lot
I
of
can't
those
believe they
games have
stunned
been
the John
shootout,
Gruden Raiders.
right?
How many more days is it till he?
Uh,
In all honesty, for David Moore, he might be worth it to be one of those people that, once again, kind of like Jeff Schwame, except I think he's a little ahead of Jeff Schwame because he's in a position of need. More so than tight end that you can keep, because a lot of people, once again, switch out tight ends weekly. If you don't have your Gronk and you don't have your Kelsey, you switch it out. The reason I would say maybe yes for David Moore is just because you have that rookie on your, or young, is he rookie? Or is he second year?
He might be, I'm not.
I'm bad with this rookie and second year thing. He may be worth it to keep on your bench to kind of see if he's going to explode, especially if you're on a team that your number 1 receiver right now, say Sterling Shepard or something like that, that we have someone in our league. Technically it's
What
Mike Evans.
happened?
Yeah, what happened? Even Mike Evans is your number 1 receiver right now with the struggling Bucks. Even that, if you have someone like that you're desperate to get a receiver start and you're not getting good trades out there, and somehow you don't get Taylor Gabriel or D.D. Westbrook or something like that, and you're really out there, yes, have him on your roster as a backup and see how he does as the season goes. But I don't think he's start worthy at this point.
Yeah, with how you had to describe that,
Exactly. That was
it's really not a very high praise for him.
It's not.
In all honesty, it's
I'm saying
not
no,
right
not
now.
at this point.
And it mainly is like the Swaim or the.
I didn't really have one. Maybe I will.
Yeah, maybe I will. I guess I had Swaim and Ito Smith. where I think the coming weeks will really tell what type of receiver you get out of him. And I really think he's probably going to be, out of the three I just mentioned, will probably be the best pickup of all of them.
Yeah, and I think for wide receivers specifically, is a good one to pick up young wide receivers before they explode. Like, for example, a couple years ago, I told everyone to get Odell Beckham picked up before he became big. Not because I thought Odell Beckham was going to be as big as he was. I never thought that much. But he was a young receiver who hadn't had a game yet that you're like, okay, I picked this guy up. He could be good because he's a rookie and they think he's going to be good. I think David Moore's in that same general area where I'm not saying he's going to be an Odell Beckham. I'm not saying he's going to be a Julio Jones or anything like that. But I'm saying that if you have the roster spot, this guy could be good as the season goes, as he moves up the depth chart, especially with Doug Baldwin struggling.
Unless you want to pick up Taylor Gabriel.
Unless you want to pick up, well, I mean, for the now, because I would never start Dave Moore. So if you're desperate like that need where Sterling Shepard is your number one receiver, then you're going to want to look at this Taylor Gabriel, Albert Wilson, and D.D. Westbrook decide because you're desperate at that point. Your team sucks at that point, and you're probably 0-5, possibly 0-6 now at that point. So, yes, and your number one receiver is Sterling Shepard, right?
Who is my number one?
You might want to listen to our stats, by the way, this week. It is your number one receiver is Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
His number one receiver is Brandon Marshall.
It was actually, let's be honest, it was actually Robert Woods going into this week.
Yeah, Robert Woods, Will Fuller.
It's not anymore. I just traded him, Michael Thomas, and then.
All right, well that was our new segment. We're gonna wrap things up here with our bold predictions for Week 7. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We all know how terrible the Broncos' rush defense is. They gave up 200 yards to Isaiah Crowell, 200 yards to Todd Gurley, and I'm going to say they're going to give up a third week of 200 yards rusher as David Johnson will finally prove why you took him in the top 5 of your draft. David Johnson's going to have over 200 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns this week.
Well, I'll add on to that because I actually went to that same game.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
David Johnson, I agree, will have over 200 yards, but so will Broncos running back.
Which one? Which one?
I'm going to go with Philip Lindsay because I say that I won't go over 200, but I will say that in total, we're going to have 450 rushing yards between both teams.
So this is going to be a quick game. It's literally, they're not even going to pass.
I mean, it's the 2 worst running defenses going against
Case
each other.
Keenum and Josh Rosen will
Just
not
take
even
the ball
pass the
off.
ball in this game. It's going to be pure running.
So yeah, I on top of his 200 for David Johnson, I say the rest of the group gets 250.
And then I'm going to go on top of both of them. And say that both teams are going to have 0 passing yards.
I'm going to say the Broncos defense and the Cardinals defense hold each other to under 25 rushing yards.
That would be the bold. That would be pure. There will be 50 rushing yards total in this game between both teams, and 20 or 30 of it will be quarterbacks.
Thanks, Keenum.
30 of it will be Josh, 30 of it, and 20 of it will be Josh Rosen. Both running backs will have 0 yards carrying. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm going all out. I'm not even going for this week. I'm going for the rest of the season. So Chiefs lost a tough game this week to the Patriots. They play the Rams later this year, guys. So my bold prediction is the Chiefs do not lose another game till the Super Bowl. You heard it here first. Chiefs win out, including the playoffs, up until the Super Bowl when they lose to whoever. I don't know. The Le'Veon Bell led Eagles at that point.
I was gonna say, wow, that's bold.
Look at that. Look at this boldness going. This is pure bold. The Le'Veon Bell led Eagles will be the next loss for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
You said that it's not applying to this week.
Well, it's applied to this week, but
yeah, because Chiefs will probably lose now.
yeah, now Chiefs will not win another game this year and not even make the playoffs.
We all know how Andy Reid's teams start. Once they lose one game, they go on a skid.
And not this year. Not this team. This team wins out.
So who's
Until the Super Bowl.
Who's Chiefs got this week?
Bengals.
The Bengals.
Congratulations, Cincy, you just won.
Brent, did you change your pick of the Bengals?
I'm really thinking about it now.
Well, look at boldness. You guys go one game. You both go Thursday night football. Yeah, I go all.
I didn't realize that we both were going to look at how awful the running defenses were.
Right?
maybe the worst running defenses ever in
I just had to laugh. As soon as he said that the Arizona Cardinals, I was like, oh God. I did the same thing as him.
How can you be bold when both your predictions are against the two worst running defenses in the NFL? Go bold. Say that the Jaguars defense is going to give up 200 yards rushing, or the Vikings defense is going to give up 2, or the Bears defense is going to give up 200 yards rushing.
Fine.
Go bold. Let's go bold. Let's not talk about the worst two rushing defenses in the league.
The Vikings defense against another rookie quarterback.
There we go. Here we go.
And who are they facing this week?
Jets.
The Jets. Sam Darnold will have over 475 passing yards and 6 touchdowns.
If you want to bet on that, I will bet you $10 that that will not happen.
That's a bold prediction.
That is bold.
Wow. All right. So I really.
you just reminded him.
What games we got?
You put it. Where did we put? I don't even know where we put it.
Browns and Bucks. Browns and Bucks.
This is a long.
Oh God.
Sorry.
That's not the right one. No, that's not right.
All right, here we go. All
We
right.
can cut that a little bit out.
All right. Oh boy.
Oh my gosh, the epicness of it. Look at this. He doesn't even have a bold prediction.
I
now.
don't.
I just threw everyone for a loop.
I don't. I know now. I'm really. You know what?
475 and 6 touchdowns. Wow.
It's a bold prediction.
It's called bold, not stupid. Bold prediction, not stupid prediction.
All right. You know what?
74 yards.
You know what? I'm back on the Josh Allen train, even though they're gonna lose.
Wait, you're with the Vikings. How much is Kirk Cousins gonna throw?
Josh Allen throws for 420 yards
I made them both dumb.
with 3 touchdowns and 5 picks.
3 touchdowns and 5 picks.
Touchdowns and 5 picks. I love it. That's a good one. I feel like that's not even stupid. That's awesome now because they're gonna be down by like 40 points at that point. And still throwing the ball. You picked the Vikings to win, and you said that so Kirk Cousins gonna have like the greatest day